Okay, welcome everyone to a little different version of Cleantech and Coffee. We're shooting from the LA office here with our chairman Lassi Noponen, who's been over here for quite some time. We're all quite buzzing with the news about Nuka recently launching a joint venture. So let's get straight into it and talk about it. Like, how about that? How did all this happen?
Well, we've been studying the feasibility of the market now for 8 months or 10 months, with the pop-up concept initially, and the person we ended up doing the joint venture with was one of the first persons I met at an event organized by the Finnish Consulate General here.
Okay.
And we've been cultivating that relationship over time, learning to know her, and she has learned to know us, and it's a great outcome. It's very important to do your due diligence, both ways before you start a business together.
So is this one of those kind of critical factors? I mean, you've spoken a lot in the past about Nordism and how that's a really good value proposition, bringing this Nordic clean tech into the US market. But how important are fostering these relationships in order for the success of it?
Yeah. And Nordism is one of the cornerstones of our strategy, and we have, like you said, spoken a lot about it. And Nordic area is the catchment area where we source our technologies and business ideas, and then we bring them to the world market. The biggest environmental problems are not in the Nordic area, but they are in other parts of the world. And we have good technology, but we do need to deploy it to those places where it can really move the needle and make the difference. But how to do that, it brings us to these relationships. I think really at the end of the day that all business fundamentally, very big factor in success is the quality of the relationships. And maybe this is less discussed today than sometimes in the past because of all the technology and that is available, but some core elements of doing business haven't changed even during the centuries. Banking business is still one of the businesses where you have family-owned businesses that are hundreds of years old because the families can hand over the relationships to next generation.
Yeah, sure.
So even if we are not in that, but building good quality relationships is at the core of our business idea. And you had something.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that. So this kind of blends in well with the long-term issue. Like the climate problem, the environmental problems we face are big issues with long.
It
time
really does.
frames.
It really does. Yeah.
And so could you explain a little bit about how that works with this longer-term creation of value in relation to the problem?
Absolutely. I mentioned this banking, but in clean tech, we are trying to solve what are some of the most difficult problems mankind is facing, and that transition will take decades. We have just started, and this is a long game. So that's why we feel that these relationships that we are building, we hope to find people that even if they're working with Nuka now or Energize or whatever it is, it can evolve into doing other things in the future. And frankly, many of the people, almost all the people we're talking to, value this in Cleantech Invest. They say, okay, I will do this now, but I'm really interested in the many things you do. And that is one of the attractions. We can attract high quality partners to work with us.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously this is leading into like the next thing I want to know, and I can guess what many of the viewers would want to know. Can you give us any anecdotes of this actually playing out for real?
Yeah, well, another one of the first people that I met here when I first came here was Eric Knudsen, who we have been working since, and he actually came to Helsinki to our first Sexy Truth event and met the team, and many of us who have been visiting here have met him, and we learned to know each other, and I hope that we've learned to value each other, and really both parties are focused in finding areas where we can cooperate long term.
Yeah.
And everybody shares the same vision of the long term game, and it's actually, our event is called Sexy Truth. It is a sexy thing to be working on solving some of these big problems. But you had a question about this value creation, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that often a lot of companies are kind of forced with when they have shareholders. Shareholders want value today. They want to see growth, they want to see returns on the investments and things like that. So how do you, I guess, explain this longer term vision and this longer term game when it comes to environmental companies versus the needs of shareholders on a short term kind of return?
It's a really good point, and much of the growth company scene, in a way, there's a lot of these, let's say, gaming industry and some of the other industries, tech industries, where the game is in a way shorter. You can create huge value in a short period of time, but maybe there is less of a visibility to that continuing with the same firm. And this is a long game because we are solving problems that are long-term problems. But we like to look at this encourage people to look at that from the positive side, that it's also a long-term opportunity for value creation. And we have just started. I mean, the magnitude of many of these things is so huge that we could continue to grow like we have 200% per year into the foreseeable future. And as long, our share has been one of the best performing shares in the stock exchange in Helsinki, Stockholm, the last 3 years. And obviously shareholders are happy when their asset value goes up. And we look forward to continuing that. Paying a dividend is of course something we would hope to be able to do, because you live with the realities of market. Even if it's nice to have the assets value go up, everybody would appreciate being able to receive something, and we hope to be able to do that in the future.
There you go. No promises of the dividend just yet, but growth.
No promises. Even if we can't promise things like that.
No, of course. But look, I hope you enjoyed this little episode of Cleantech and Coffee, talking about the importance of relationships and how to leverage those to get this long-term growth.
Absolutely.
And if you have any questions for any of us in the team at Cleantech Invest, make sure you comment or send them through to us. We always like to try and hear from you, and hopefully we can provide good answers.
I would like to promise that we will try to keep our viewers posted to new things that are happening here on a regular basis.
That's right. So stay tuned to hear more from Lassi and the growing kind of relationships and stakeholders here in LA. Cheers.